Welcome to Internext Global On Demand. Please enjoy the session at your own pace.
Welcome to today's session, during which we will discuss planning for consumer products companies in an era of exponential change. It is clear that consumer products companies must be more agile than ever before to respond to changing market conditions. And we see that consumer behavior and preferences are constantly shifting due to macroeconomic changes. Other challenges, such as inflation and sourcing constraints, are also impacting consumer products goods companies. During this session, we'll discuss how consumer products leaders are increasing their supply chain agility to better anticipate supply disruptions, how to ensure that demand sensing and planning processes are fit for purpose in a rapidly changing world, and what technology and process levers are for managing a consumer products company in an inflationary environment. My name is Stijn Pieter, or SP, and I lead our global manufacturing knowledge and innovation team. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you our panelists. We have Kevin today, who is an off-trade sales director at Molson Coors. We have Yulia, who leads the global IBP Program Director at AB InBev. We have Alice, the head of demand planning for North America at Kraft Heinz. And we have Gerard, for the global IBP and data analytics director of Resideo. So welcome everyone. And I suggest we start with the first question. So over the past 24 to 36 months, supply chains have experienced an unprecedented level of disruption. And we can see that from COVID to port congestion. And what are some of the biggest challenges you and your organizations have faced? So maybe Gerard, we start with you on this question.
Hello, sure. Thanks, Asti, and hello, everyone. So in terms of challenges, I believe we all had a good diversity, in the last 2 to 3 years, and they made the end-to-end value chain management and optimization more and more complicated and difficult to predict. Maybe the most challenging was to understand how to reconcile and to align demand and supply when they both reach record level of volatility and disruptions. And in such a constrained and volatile situation, I think demand prioritization became a very difficult exercise for us. And it required, much more cross-functional work and team efforts than before. Very often, speed and complexity are not the best friends. And it has been a challenge to deal with a lot of variability and changes and to be able to quickly take the right decisions for the business and for our customers. So this is maybe one challenge. Maybe another one was linked with our ability to assess the real level of resilience of our supply chain. Do not think that your best best suppliers will always be able to support you. Do not underestimate the risks you have in your supply chain. We almost need to have a plan for every supplier, for every situation. And of course, in our case, especially for our single source material. So, in terms of challenges we had to manage in the past years, I would like to highlight these two: how to deal with the increased level of complexity of our supply chain, and how to move to a more predictive supply chain risk management. So I think these are the two biggest challenges we saw in the past 2 to 3 years, I would say.
Okay, very interesting. Yulia, how would you see that for AB InBev?
Thank you, SP. So for ABI, since 2019, indeed, we have been constantly dealing with a series of high-risk disruptions, both global level and regional level, that basically left little to no time before the next high-risk event occur. And there was a major change in the risk environment surrounding our supply chain operations, and it's remarkable in 3 ways. So first, the risk events, they seem to be everywhere, they're omnipresent, and the world has seen major risk related to geopolitical wars, global trade wars, and tariff increases, extremely difficult climate changes such as hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, extreme heat waves, and things like that. They all caused our transportation delays, production disruptions. We had shortages and we had delivery delays. So in this environment, no location is deemed to be safer than any other. Secondly, these risk events are increasing in frequency. So the trade war between China and US continued, and then we had global COVID pandemic. COVID turned into a global pandemic. So while we had some waves of that pandemic, they rose and fell. Political unrest in US also swelled, and the pandemic-related surge in demand for goods combined with some port capacity shortages, labor shortages, also led to port congestions, and we faced high increase of cost, high delays. Also, we see that now Europe is facing this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We also saw semiconductor industry and issues there also impacting our production lines and ability to deliver goods. So there has been a certain increase in rate of those disruptions, and it becomes exceedingly challenging to manage. And the third thing is that it becomes very costly, right? So with all these disruptions that are constant and so high in frequency, it's not a temporary cost increase to serve our customers. It's indeed becoming a permanent increase, and it seems to be escalating because this amount of risk, they just don't go anywhere.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. And maybe Kevin, also since you're in the same industry, of course, what would you consider would have been the biggest surprises or any disruptions that you actually never anticipated?
Well, I think as you've heard, we've all had to face into many problems over the last 2 to 3 years. So clearly COVID-19 impacts have been there, but there's also been quite a lot of other things that you could just never have anticipated. Yulia talked about demand volatility. So here in the UK, when we had COVID, all the pubs, hotels, restaurants were closed, and meant that there was a huge shift in demand from one channel to another. We also then saw people who weren't drinking in glass actually move into cans and bottles, and that actually led to a global shortage of aluminium cans. So our sector has also faced other issues like the CO2 shortage. So carbon dioxide production was impacted due to the energy costs and closing of fertilizer plants, and that really did drive high inflation for these types of commodities, and meant that businesses have had to take different methods to actually sourcing these types of products.
Right.
So if you then throw into the mix things like systems and parts shortages that Yulia also referenced, it just means that the extended component lead times from Asia mean if you have any issues within your facilities, it takes much longer to fix. You also then see things like cyber attacks across the US, crippling IT systems, shortages of skilled people. I think we've almost seen the perfect storm in our industry over the course of the last 2 to 3 years.
Right. So you could actually summarize whichever dimension you look at the supply chain, there has been disruptions, whether it's on the consumer side, whether it's on the geographical side, whether it's on the supplier side or geopolitical side. There's so many unprecedented changes that we have seen in recent years. It's almost impossible to have anticipated any of all of those as such. And maybe Kevin, continuing with you then, what are some of the most important lessons learned that you would also like to share, and maybe things that you want to continue in how you have changed your ways of working, but also maybe things you've now come to realize you would continue to do differently as well?
Yeah, so one of our key company values is being bold and decisive. And I think in crisis situations, and we've seen a few of those, it's important that everybody recognizes that things won't be perfect. So for example, if an IT system goes down, you have to look very quickly and respond very quickly to large groups and how you can then fix that issue. So it's absolutely critical to be clear on purpose and priorities. We talk about communication, all the way through these challenging times. Keep talking. And I think collaboration and transparency across the wider business is really, really critical. But the most important lesson I think our organization learned is just recognizing that in challenging times, things won't always be perfect in the short term. You have to accept that and find a way.
Okay, very good. And maybe going to you, Julia, as well. Could you maybe share a bit of a light how you have changed your planning practices since these recent waves of disruptions, and maybe look at it from a organizational perspective, or process, or technology perspective?
Yes, so in ABI, we relied on visibility, resilience, and agility to improve our responses to those disruptions. And these three capabilities, they work together. So visibility ensures that supply chain senses risk early on. Resilience ensures that there are some options and we have enough options to fuel a risk response. And agility ensures that there is a flexibility necessary to use those options to respond very quickly. And we feel like it's only possible by deploying digital transformation and workforce strategies that are designed for today's world. And supply chain planning leaders play a key role because we are tasked with building the right processes and culture to enable faster, better, and more aligned business decisions. And in ABI, we have a big supply chain planning transformation together with online solutions. It's already underway, and it's aimed to enable this alignment of end-to-end plans in supply chain and standardize processes that are connecting different functions. We transformed the way we work. We enabled our end-to-end supply chain planning visibility, and through this link with the real-world situational awareness, supply chain decision-making and risk management were greatly enhanced. And these disruptions, indeed, they highlighted the need to collaborate and communicate across the supply chain. And last year, we focused on building open lines of communications with our key suppliers, so we were able to better coordinate our response to the disruptions and minimize the impact to our operations. So we introduced tactical MRP planning, which we in some BUs we didn't even have before. Okay. So we created a separate org structure for it, and we started looking at longer horizons and started having this SNOP and SNOE meetings with our critical suppliers. And this year we will continue this process, and we will enable online solutions technologies to support us in being efficient in exchanging those plans with our key suppliers. We also invested and implemented advanced planning tool to better forecast our demand and optimize inventory levels. And this helped us to have the right inventory at the right place so that we can respond quickly to changes in demand due to the disruptions. And from organizational point of view, in demand planning, we centralized statistical forecasted into 2 global hubs with global COE support. We introduced segmentation to our portfolio of goods. We also started a couple of projects to introduce clustering of supply chain. And online helped us to enable machine learning algorithms that all in all helped us to improve forecast accuracy. And in some markets, we also introduced multi-echelon inventory optimization so that we can break silos and enable those trade-offs, for instance, between finished goods and materials. And inventories continues to be a growing focus for us because we are basically sitting on a huge pile of cash because interest rates are sky high, and also our cost of goods is increasing, right? So for us, going forward, inventories is a huge focus. And those disruptions, they also highlighted the importance of risk management and contingency planning. And with our supply chain planning transformation and online solutions, we were also able to run multiple scenarios faster. So we transformed our ways of working in supply chain planning by introducing heuristics guided by Optimizer. And this change specifically allowed us to run faster solve run times and to run more scenarios. We also introduced concurrent planning, and we replaced many manual processes and we automated them. And this allowed us to have several contingency plans in place to respond to those disruptions and minimize the impact. And our planners are now equipped with a fast, modern solution, and all their processes are automated so that they have more time to add value and to drive decisions during SNOP and SNOE cycles.
Well, that's pretty amazing, the number of changes you have pushed through the organization, if you will, whether it's org or process or from a technology side. But good to hear the impact that's already having. Maybe also, Adis, if you could share your perspective on the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a very important question. Obviously, over the last 3 years with COVID disruption, but not limited only to COVID, we as an organization had to make a real step forward towards transformation, looking at the end-to-end, all of our end-to-end planning practices. So we started looking at our operational efficiency and effectiveness. How are we able to respond to disruptions, which is now every day, every week, every month, new normal. And we really looked at digital transformation as an enabler of that. So we self-reflected essentially where improvements are needed and looked at the full supply chain from demand to supply. On the demand side, we went through a 09 implementation during COVID, and we see the benefits of that today, and I'll talk about that in a little second. So we did evaluate the technology landscape, and we made real capital investments, and one of those was 09. And it was not easy to do that during COVID, but we had to be agile enough to do the implementation and deploy that system and really start reaping the benefits in terms of forecast accuracy. Julia talked about that in terms of the SKU location. How do we serve our consumers, having the right forecast at the right place at the right time. We also doubled down and looked at full process transformation. IBP, integrated business planning, for us is something that's critical in terms of the way we operate, in terms of the way we execute, in terms of the way we make decisions. It's really enabling us to be agile in the way we look at information, the way we make decisions, and the way we push those decisions downstream, and then how do we get back to those decisions and quickly react if the market conditions have changed, which they sometimes change a lot. But we only didn't look at technology and process. With those changes in technology and process, 09 on demand, for example, and IBP as an organization, we looked at the people sector as well. How do we as an organization have to restructure and transform the way we work, the way we operate? And an example for us in demand, we went from a decentralized demand structure to a centralized demand structure. So that really allowed us to be nimble, share best practices, operate in a much more efficient way. And ultimately, I think when we look at these disruption, it comes down to your ambition, like your North Star. And, we as an organization, we want to be, the leader across planning in the industry. And we continue to focus on, technology side, but it's not just technology in terms of ways of working, but it's also the data side. How do we leverage data integration, real-time decision-making, and really, really focused on agile ways of working from people, process, technology.
No, and I think again those are some very great examples of the changes you've pushed through. And maybe continuing with you, Adis, as well. Do you expect this level of disruption to continue in the coming years? And maybe what are some of the major risks that you're worried about today already that you can see coming?
No, for sure. I think, again, lots of opinions, right? But from my perspective, the new normal will be ever changing, right? As our environment, a competitive landscape, geopolitical conditions, economic conditions, and social conditions are changing faster rate than ever before. And it feels like we say that every year, but it's truly true, right? During COVID, a lot of those changes are continuing to disrupt the way we operate, the way we plan. And we continue to see that today, right? We live in an inflationary environment, socio-political impacts, resource supply constraints, and many, many more. The question behind the question is, how will we as an organization and other organizations structure themselves to respond to this ever-changing environment? And this comes down to, the organization needing to be nimble, needing to be agile, continuously adapt their technology processes to be able to respond to that. And I think ultimately it just boils down to the culture. It boils down to the organizational setup to be able to respond to economic uncertainty. And as organizational leaders, as organizations, it's the empowerment of the process, of the people through the technology that should allow us to react, to the new normal, which is ever changing. So that's from my perspective. Yes, I believe it's going to continue. It's here to stay.
Awesome. And maybe Kevin, also from your side, from Molson Coors, how would you see the same question applied to you?
Yeah, I fully agree with a lot of the points there that Adis made. I think the rapidly changing environment appears to be here to stay with us for the long term. So agility is going to be absolutely critical in every organization, but the need for the right processes, the right tools, and the right structure is going to be important to be able to plan effectively and respond quickly. And that's why at Molson Coors, we continue to invest in the best technology, and we also continue to invest in all of our people capability. Supply has improved over the last 6 months, I'd say. It's got better, but we still need to invest in broadening our supply base. We need to ensure that we've got that increased flexibility and capability in all of our assets and also our people. And I think we shouldn't forget that the competitive advantage comes from delighting customers and consumers. An excellent service at an optimized cost is what we have to have in our minds almost every day within the organization. So I think that agility and speed to responding to this changing environment will continue, and it will be absolutely important to our success.
Fully understand, and of course also fully agree. So that's almost like a transformation in itself that's still ahead of you. And maybe Julia, moving on to the next question. So from a, let's say, transformation perspective, what is the next wave of change that excites you the most for your business? And what technology or strategic change do you think is really exciting from your perspective?
I believe that the biggest challenges for supply chain leaders are going to be cultural and organizational, because plan accuracy improvement remains the top challenge that is mostly commonly mentioned within the top 3 objectives of planning transformations. However, I believe that supply chain planning leaders will need to engage stakeholders from all functions and all levels to focus not on plan accuracy, but on faster decision making and coping with uncertainty. So the existing paradigm that we also in ABI are utilizing assumes that an ever-increasing accurate demand forecast is constantly propagated upstream in the supply chain to drive decisions for capacity, inventory, production, procurement, etc. And when the demand changes, so all the upstream deterministic decisions. And in earlier times of the steadier state, this approach worked reasonably well. But in times of uncertainty, its use results in supply chain are said to be rigid and fragile. And that is very opposite to the resilient supply chain, which implies flexibility, adaptability, and especially when it relates to the impact of end-to-end decision making. So we need to drive from unknown uncertainty to known variability by using artificial intelligence and machine learning for different multiple predictions. This is the so-called probabilistic planning, which I believe is the future that also excites me. And this will start with the switch from deterministic to resilient supply chains. And the technologies here, they will help us to identify those unplanned events that are gonna happen in the short term that will impact our ability to execute against the things that were planned. And then this technology can further identify all possible options for mitigating those unplanned events and could automatically or autonomously make a decision based on constraint, business rule, targets, policies, etc. So advanced analytics and artificial intelligence techniques like simulations, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, they are becoming more common elements of technologies that support supply chain. And we need to take the inventory of all the decisions that are made in the organization within this short-term horizon and classify them into those that can be made autonomously. So where everyone in the organization will take the same decision, given the data insights, and automate it where human intervention is required by exception, or it can be done via analytics and artificial intelligence that can augment this decision making. So we need to further digitalize decision making process and stop being forecast driven, and we need to change our supply chain planning focus from uncertainty rather than exclusively on the plan's accuracy.
Awesome, and I think you mentioned as well at the start, there's a cultural and organizational impact that in the end needs to enable all of this. So maybe Gerard, also, what would be your perspective on this question?
Yeah, sure. So I believe that in terms of supply chain management, we are all looking for visibility, flexibility, agility. I think Kevin, Adis, Yulia talk about that as well. We need more data. We need more information. We all want to see more, to analyze more, to be able to run multiple scenarios, to take the best decisions, and if possible, in a shorter period of time. So it puts a lot of pressure there. And I'm convinced that the technologies, like Online should help companies to connect people and data across planning, procurement, manufacturing, logistics, sales, but even beyond the four walls of the organization. We talk more and more about digital twins. I really believe that we are in the middle of this digital transformation of our end-to-end planning process, building these digital twins, leveraging machine learning, artificial intelligence capabilities. For me, at least in our current situation at Resideo, this is just the beginning of the journey, and the destination is exciting, but I think the journey itself, what we are going to learn by doing this transformation is even more exciting. So of course, this is not easy every day, but I think this is very motivating. Being able, to have a stronger data connectivity and integration through the entire supply chain, from end users to supplier of suppliers, and vice versa is critical for us. So it means stronger integration of external data to improve demand and supply sensing, and to improve collaboration with customers and suppliers. Yulia talked about that. But it means as well higher level of connectivity of internal data. So, connecting, reconciling demand, supply data, planning and execution, like, we talk about IBP, connecting IBP with transportation management system, connecting IBP with manufacturing execution system. So everything there is very exciting from my point of view. And, back to what I mentioned before, back to speed and complexity, we need to continue to integrate and to connect more and more data in our technology platform. So in our case, in your case as well, in the online platform, to support our processes, to help the teams, the organization to take the right decisions, to increase, our capability to manage this additional level of variability we can see. And at the end, it's really about, how do we improve our resilience? And, for us, a major topic coming more and more, this is about sustainability and circular economy. How do we take control of that? How do we increase visibility, flexibility, and agility, really to be much better and to have stronger performance in terms of sustainability? So this is very exciting, and I really think that the technology will be a key enabler for us, to work on that.
Awesome. And I think as we're moving towards the end of the panel, I had one last question also for you, Gerard and Adis, right? So what would you actually recommend other companies to focus on to help them actually better manage their changing market conditions? And also, of course, considering your own experiences in this area. So would like to continue with you, Gerard, and then we'll end with Adis.
Sure, I speak. So if I may, we are all different, but I think my first recommendation will be to have always a holistic and consistent approach. Always consider, organization, process, and technology together. Each of them, can influence the two others. And when you define your strategy, you have to understand how they interact together. Otherwise, you can lose a lot of time and money. And as I mentioned, this is a long journey, and it's better to be right at the beginning. So from my point of view, this is critical to focus and to invest on these three pillars. Technology can definitively help planning and execution. The future of supply chain is digital. We are all talking about that. And in the near future, we will most probably see an increased level of autonomy in the way we manage supply chain. And we will have people and more focus on exceptions, on gap closing, on issues, instead of, managing the data to run the supply chain. Then in terms of processes, I cannot agree more with Adis than what he said before. Integrated business planning should be a core process in the company, like the backbone of the management system. It should help to have the right balances, the balance between the end-to-end value chain optimization and functional excellence, the balance between short-term execution and long-term vision. So for me, IBP in terms of process should really become the backbone, of the management system. And finally, people and organization. New investment in organization, in employees development is required to prepare this big transformation. For me, this is a key element of the change management. Communication, training, engagement, make sure that we have the right behaviors. These are very critical points from my point of view.
Yeah, maybe since we're almost at time, maybe at least if there's one recommendation you want to give to the audience as well, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, look, this will depend from organization to organization, industry to industry. My recommendation would be, again, look at your operational efficiency and effectiveness spectrum, where you strive to be. In addition, and I think in complement, we have to look in the culture, the organizational culture. It has to be a culture that promotes collaboration, empowers team, welcomes innovation, and honestly has a high expectation for accountability and high performance. That's the starting point. This will lead you to looking at everything that Gerard said, organizational structure, process, technology, and all of that with underlying foundational principles of agility and speed, and then data. So again, it's the organizational willingness and appetite to change. It will differ from place to place, but I think all of those are critical. I think we mentioned it all here today. So thank you.
Well, thanks again for joining the panel today. I really enjoyed it, and I believe it offered some great new insights and learnings for our audience. So thanks again, and speak soon.